Okay, we are back. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-host, Andrea Kay and Al Arias. And our next guest, Mr. Andrew Baer from Inventus. Welcome, Andrew.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Inventus, we could go a whole lot of ways with the name, so why don't you start out by telling us what it is that you do?
Well, I know you kind of led in with the fact that we'd overlap with intellectual property, but we are not an inventing company. The name is somewhat random, but what Inventus is really focused on is e-discovery management. We work with corporations and law firms to help mitigate the risk and reduce the costs associated with the discovery process. And in doing so, we are oftentimes involved in data collections, data preservations, processing data so that attorneys can actually search it and review it, and then walking them through the production process and eventually assisting with any sort of court-related needs as far as trial is concerned.
You know, what I just noticed on the information sheet I have on Inventus is, which surprised me because I didn't notice it before, you employ 250 people.
That's correct. Yes.
That's quite a statement. You know, we appreciate that in our community here.
Yeah. Well, I would say that not all 250 here are in San Diego alone. We have 10 offices throughout the United States at this point. A good probably 55 though are here in San Diego. So it's a pretty strong presence, especially for a company in our market space.
Right. And your market is to support law firms. Am I correct?
I would say actually it's leaning more towards supporting corporations at this point. We work hand in hand with the law firms. Our general goal, though, is to make sure that discovery costs that result from litigation or an inquiry, a government inquiry, an SEC investigation that a corporation receives, those discovery costs are lessened. And in doing so, we're leveraging technology to make sure that the attorneys at the law firms are being efficient and managing their review in a way that keeps costs at a minimum to the end client, the corporation.
Is it always a legal foundation that people come to you for, or do people come to you just to do discovery on something that they're interested in?
It's generally always a legal foundation, but legal foundation goes beyond your standard litigation these days. It goes into internal investigations. It could be a government inquiry like a SEC or a DOJ investigation.
I bet you could find Lois Lerner's emails, couldn't you?
That's a good question. You know,
I'm teasing.
There's a way probably to do that.
Yeah, we figured there was.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Good answer.
Yeah, Andrew's always got to stick that 2 cents in there. So, interesting. So,
yeah, see, I would have thought that it was primarily law firms. I wouldn't have thought that there would be a corporate base.
Well, I think that was sort of the mantra several years ago, and corporations realized that they were paying these law firms extraordinary amounts of money to handle their review process. So in the downturn of the economy, in the recession, you saw a lot of law firms kind of shifting their billing arrangements, right? And they were adjusting to kind of flat fee type of billing arrangements, and that was putting pressure on the law firms to figure out ways to sort of cut costs. And the corporations, when they were enacting those kind of fixed billing arrangements with their lawyers, also saw that a lot of the bills involved this concept of e-discovery, and they were paying large amounts of money to just get their corporate information into a format that would allow the law firms to review it. So they began to take notice of that and internalize a lot of the decision making around e-discovery and e-discovery management in-house.
Yeah, I'm not aware of too many other firms that are actually doing this.
Yeah, there are in San Diego. There's only a handful. I'd say there's about 3 direct competitors here in San Diego. Nationwide, there's a few hundred organizations, and globally there's probably a few thousand.
If there's only a few hundred in the United States, that tells me that you've tapped into something. You know, it tells me one of two things: you're either on the wrong track, which I doubt with 250 employees, or you've tapped into something very special that can help a lot of people out.
Certainly.
Yeah, and
you're doing it well to be able to grow into 10 offices.
Yes, that's correct. I think the name of the game right now has been somewhat of a consolidation process. There were a vast amount of sort of mom and pop e-discovery companies that opened up over the past few years, and they've quickly sort of unfortunately shut their doors because they couldn't sustain the amount of capital that it takes to kind of maintain the technology that we employ. So the mom and pops have kind of come and gone, and some of the more regional organizations that were successful are starting to partner together through mergers and acquisitions and grow into these bigger, more global type of organizations.
In fact, you guys were just involved in a merger.
We were,
Right,
correct. Yeah. So Inventus, prior to Inventus, we were actually part of Terrace. And Terrace was 6 offices, primarily all West Coast based. And in September of last year, Inventus, a Chicago-based organization, decided to acquire 5 of the Terrace offices. So we kind of rolled under that Inventus umbrella, and it's actually been the last year since that acquisition's been tremendous. Inventus has a presence on the East Coast and the Midwest, and with Terrace's former offices all being West Coast based, we had no geographic overlap, so we can quickly expanded to a nationwide organization overnight. But Inventus had developed some sort of proprietary homegrown e-discovery management workflows and technology, and built that into technology that every other company is using, but did so in a way that nobody else has really attempted before. And that's kind of helped us open the door into much bigger opportunities and more importantly, saving our corporate and law firm clients tremendous amounts of money.
Okay, great. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business here on KFSD AM 1450 and financialnewsandtalk.com. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-hosts Andrea Kay and Al Arias, and our guest is Andrew Baer from Inventus. So
Andrew, you are his title continues to fascinate me.
Yeah.
I mentioned this before the show. You are the
that makes 2 of us.
Yeah. You are the managing shareholder, which isn't a title I think I've ever heard before. We've certainly haven't heard that here on the show.
If it was an LLC, he'd be a managing member.
Oh.
Everyone knows that one.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Al. See, Al's the most interesting man in the room. He knows everything.
I appreciate that because now I know.
Yes, now you know. So, and you were explaining to me beforehand that that's kind of like being, for people to understand, that's like the managing partner.
I see that they are an LLC.
Yeah.
So he's actually the managing member.
Yeah, which is like, as he said, it's kind of like the managing partner at a law firm, but it's also a nod to the fact that to the employee-owned kind of philosophy,
Organization.
correct?
That's correct. So Inventus has sort of benchmarks that they've set in place to afford every employee the opportunity to kind of be a partial vested owner in their organization. And as doing so, a title, whether it means that I'm a higher rung candidate for that type of vesting, it really shouldn't. Like I said, every employee has that opportunity to kind of reach that status. But what managing shareholder means locally is that I'm sort of in charge of the day-to-day operations of our sales team, our technology department, our production department, answering up the chain to sort of regional vice presidents, and then ultimately to our CEO, who answers to the board of directors.
That's a big job. 55 people you got to keep track of every day.
Yeah, well, it's helped that I've been part of that same team for the last 10 years at this point.
So you were with Terrace originally?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So they drafted me out of the minors, and
yeah.
I got the call up, and I've been...
And now you're in the show.
I'm in the show. So it's been a great run thus far, and we've enjoyed continued success over the years.
Wow.
So maybe next time we have him back, he's going to be president.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
Yeah. I'll take the helicopter next time.
Yeah. Okay.
So you deal with firms for intellectual property, litigation, cybersecurity. You're pretty vast in the description of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah. It's pretty much any type of practice that might incorporate the discovery process at some point in time.
It sounds to me like there would be a lot of call for your service in patent law. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
No, that's tremendously correct. So you could imagine the Apple versus Samsung cases that have been going on and on and on. And it's all about intellectual property in those cases. And they're battling about who developed what and who took what to where. And that was, a benchmark case as far as e-discovery is concerned, because there was just so much data involved that both sides had to deal with in not only reviewing their own company's information, but then reviewing the other side's. So that's a good example of an intellectual property case that resulted in significant e-discovery related expenditures.
It's interesting. I remember one of my clients many years ago was the guy who invented the original cordless telephone.
Interesting.
Before cell phones, whatever, the original cordless telephone.
Andrew looks so young. I don't think you've ever seen one. Have you, Andrew?
Oh, I've seen them.
They were like the size of
We
a
still have
high-top basketball
We still have them around the house. I don't. But,
I Googled one time.
Oh, yeah.
The interesting
Ouch.
part, I know. The interesting part about this guy was he never made any money developing the first cordless phone. He made his money suing all the big boys, which took information like you provide.
Right.
He's suing all the big boys who stole his patent.
Oh, okay.
Hey, any way you can make it. That's what I say.
Yeah, definitely.
So
capitalism.
So
we love it.
The technology that you use apparently seeks information from whatever source.
That's generally a people-driven process. We leverage technology to kind of get at that information, but it's
so somebody else got the information, you assemble it.
We will go out and get the information. We'll take notes with the corporate IT personnel and corporate legal department as to which pieces or data sources of information need to be collected, and we will leverage technology to go out and collect it. But it's really them pointing us to where they need the information gathered from, and then we use technology to then make it completely searchable so that the attorneys can review it for any sort of smoking gun type of documents.
Wow. Well, before we get too close to the end here, let's get some of your identification out. How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. You can reach our website at www.inventus.com. Myself, you can call me at 619-913-5970, or my email address is abayer, ABAYER, @inventus.com.
Great. And before we finish up, you have to have some great story of something that you've pulled up in your investigations. Anything you can share with us?
One that kind of stood out to me, generally the data collections efforts are the ones where the best stories kind of reside. And one that stands out is there was a law firm that we were working with, and they called in several of their former clients who were now under investigation to come to a meeting, and they didn't tell them really the guise of the meeting, and they said to bring their laptops. And they had two people on conference call as well in various cities. And at the second that the meeting was supposed to start, our team had to come in and actually confiscate the computers that they brought in. And the two remote people had knocks on the door from forensic experts who then confiscated those computers that were part of this investigation that these people had to sort of adhere to on behalf of this law firm.
Oh, dear.
So it was kind of an organized
it's like a sting.
game sting type of thing. So that's as glitzy as it gets in the e-discovery world, I guess.
I can
not
just
like
imagine.
war games, huh?
Well, right.
No.
Well, I can just imagine the looks on those guys' faces though, when their laptops, wondering, gee, what sites was I looking on yesterday?
Yeah, it was an interesting room to be in with the video conference call and hearing the door knock and seeing these people get up and sort of the amazement in their
Wow.
look.
Well,
take a bodyguard with you next time you
definitely.
do something like that.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for being with us.
Of course.
Love the story, love the service. So we'll have to keep spreading the word.
Great. Thank you.
Great. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business, where we get close and personal with homegrown San Diego businesses and the people that are working hard to make a difference in our community. This is financialnewsandtalk.com. I'm your host, Barry Waxler. We'll be right back after the break with more homegrown business close-up, and we will have with us Mr. Bill McCracken from American Mutual Benefits.